Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Zane. Wanted to talk about how you properly talk to police officers. This video joint is going to focus on how to properly talk to police officers. I know I've said you want to record the police at all times, and I'm still sticking to that proposition till I turn blue in the face, right? Always record the police in a non-belligerent, non-threatening way. The exception to that is you don't record the police unless you don't have a direct interest. What is a direct interest? You record the police when you've been pulled over, your family members have been pulled over, somebody that you know or somebody that you're passionate about or something you're passionate about. That's when you start recording. You don't just walk up to police officers and start recording, especially when they've done nothing to you. Okay, you don't just do that. If it's somebody you know, they're giving them a hard time, somebody they're doing something to they shouldn't, then you can record. But you don't just record cops for the hell of it, just because you want to. All right. So that's the brief gist of when you should record police and how this plays into how to properly talk to cops. Recording cops is an action of kind of properly talking to cops. It's a gesture you're doing. So once you do get pulled over and you have a direct interest, you start recording. But how are you going to talk to the cop when the cop talks to you, right? Especially if you're recording them, you're going to have a record of everything they're saying, right? And the record's also going to show how you're interacting with the cops. So when you are talking to the cops when you get pulled over, you want to be as professional as possible and keep your answers as limited as you can. Again, this applies to you only if you're pulled over. I'll have to make a separate video about when another family member or somebody you're interested in, something you're interested in, like social injustice being done, how to talk to the cops then. If that, you can be a little bit more aggressive if it's somebody else that's being pulled over or like a social cause. And I'll get into that later, like I said. But when it's specifically you in the car, let's just say it's you in the car, and maybe your dog's in this back seat or something, or you have a little kid in the back, or just maybe you and somebody else in the car, right? The same thing applies if it was just you. So let's just say it's you and your dog that's in the back seat that got pulled over. First thing, you pulled out your phone already. You're recording you're recording an interaction. And you're recording the interaction because you don't trust the police is recording. Never trust what the police is recording, because sometimes they may not record appropriately. They may not record everything, right? So check out my video on why you should always record the police. I have it in my videos. But like I said, you want to be as professional and keep your answers as limited as possible. You say yes sir, no ma'am. No sir, no ma'am. Okay? Why do you say that? You don't just say it because you're supposed to say it, right? You say it because you don't want to give the cops a hard time. You don't want to aggravate them. I know some of you guys don't want to even say yes ma'am, no sir, no ma'am, and all of that to police officers, right? Because you're like, they're the pigs, I don't like them. But you say it because you don't want to give them a hard time, okay? You do it as a courtesy. You do it to get it over with. You do it because whatever, okay? Let's just get it over with. Let's get it out of the way. Okay, does that make sense? So, and if they ask you some personal questions, if you don't want to answer them, you just say, I'm not comfortable with answering that, sir. I'm not going to answer this question. If they keep asking you, same thing. I'm not going to answer this question. I don't feel comfortable answering that. And a lot of guys these days know already the first thing after a couple of questions, am I detained or am I free to go? I'm a strong proponent of that. And I still believe you should say, if you feel like you're not being detained and you're now it's kind of like escalating and the cops like just coming up with questions to give you a hard time, you could say, am I free to go or am I detained? If they say you are detained, generally you're not free to go at that point. Okay, you want to still, you don't change anything at that point. You just, if you are detained, you just stay in the car, still be polite, say yes sir, no sir, keep your answers as limited as you can, and you may be able to get an attorney. You may be able to request an attorney if you are being detained. So don't answer any questions. You can invoke your right to get an attorney and say, I don't want to answer any questions unless I have an attorney. But let's say you're not detained, right? The police officer's just talking to you, and he doesn't have probable cause. He had reasonable suspicion initially to talk to you, and he did kind of do a little bit interrogation on you. Usually, when they do have reasonable suspicion, they can kind of detain you, and I'll do another video on this as well. They can kind of detain you in a brief manner, not for very long, in a brief manner, but they need reasonable suspicion. So even if they do have reasonable suspicion and they're talking to you, be very polite. Say yes sir, no sir, no ma'am, yes ma'am, and keep your answers as short as possible. As short as possible. What are you doing here? I'm here enjoying myself. That's an example. Do you have any reason to be here? I have just as much of a reason to be here as the next person does. Here's another perfect example. If they ask you, where are you going? Sir, I'm going to take care of my day. I'm going back. You don't even have to tell them where you're going if you don't want to. I'm going with my day. Is there anything I can help you with? Why am I being stopped? Why am I being detained? And if they don't have reasonable suspicion at all, right, then they can't even detain you. Then you can just come up with the question and be like, am I free to go or not? Right? So the main thing I want you to get out of this video is how to properly talk to cops. You don't want to be a jerk. You don't want to be an asshole, because that's just going to further complicate things for you. Okay? And a lot of guys that do record the cops, usually they're not jerks, guys. They're not jerks. They're polite. They're well mannered. They know what they're doing. They've researched the law. They come off as cool, confident, cool, calm, and collected and confident. And the cop can pick up on that. And the cop knows this guy knows what he's doing. I'm not going to give him a hard time, right? So be as professional as possible. Be as courteous as possible. Keep it short. Keep it simple. Don't answer any personal questions. Don't waive any of your rights. Don't consent to anything, right? Don't consent to a search, okay? And if you feel like something is up, always invoke your right for an attorney. If you feel like this is turning into something further than just a reasonable talk or just a talk, invoke your right for an attorney, all right? And now whether they have to give you an attorney at that very point, at that very moment, is something the cop's going to determine. But don't worry. Sometimes the cop's not always right? So if there are charges pressed against you, your attorney will be able to determine if you were given an attorney at an appropriate time or not. So again, from this video, understand the fact, be courteous, be polite, be well-mannered, keep it short, simple, and sweet. Invoke your rights. Invoke, am I free to go or am I being detained? If they have reasonable suspicion, which is a little bit less of a threshold than probable cause, they'll come and talk to you. It's not really a detention, but at the same time, you're not really free to go. It's not a full-blown detention. It's a Terry stop usually when you have a reasonable suspicion. I'll put a link for that. If they do have probable cause, unfortunately, they will tell you you are being detained. You may be able to invoke your right for an attorney at that point. But regardless, whatever the situation is, you want to be cool, calm, collected, and confident, okay? And be polite at all times. Don't escalate things. Don't rush into things. And be calm. Don't let the nerves get the best of you. All right, guys? I am out. Peace.